In 2281, a small town near the eastern tip of Old California lay in ruins, its former residents on pikes, twisting on crosses, or crumbling to ash. From the town hall, a man wearing a coyote headdress watched it all with satisfaction. I'm the Irresolute Cartographer, and this is the story of what happened to Nipton, California. We'll start this with an examination of the sites surrounding Nipton in the Fallout universe and in the real world. We'll then move into the layout of the town in the Fallout universe and how it compares to the town in the real world. We'll examine the history of Nipton in the Fallout universe and a brief history of Nipton in the real world. We'll then close with some notes I have on the topic. With that said, let's get started. In the Fallout universe, Nipton lies south of the Las Vegas Strip, towards the southwestern end of the version of the Mojave we get to explore in Fallout New Vegas. To the northwest of town, the radioactive Jackrabbit Springs is home to hideous centaurs. To the north-northwest, the Prospector's Den, once a refuge for scavengers, has been captured by the Jackals gang. North of Nipton, a coyote den cuts into the hillside along the railroad track. North-northeast of Nipton lies Deadwind Cavern, a Deathclaw-infested cave with a suit of power armor and automatic grenade launcher that waits for those able to survive plumbing its depths. Northeast of Nipton, the Hidden Supply Cave cuts into the hillside. This cave full of crates is more closely connected to Searchlight than Nipton, so we'll cover it in more depth there. Northeast of Nipton lies Walking Box Cavern, a cave filled with Night Stalkers and a nice set of reinforced combat armor for those who can brave its depths. East-northeast of Nipton, Wolfhorn Ranch sits near the crest of the ridge separating the Ivanpa Valley from the valley to the east. The ranch itself is a small farm with a shack, windmill, a flagpole, and a grave. East of Nipton, the raided farmstead is a small farm and junk pile about which the Vipers gang is very territorial. East-southeast of Nipton sits Matthew's Animal Husbandry Farm, a site with a sad story more relevant to Searchlight, so I'll save it for that video. Southeast of Nipton lies the Caesars Legion Safe House, a small base of operations for Caesars forces on the NCR side of the river. The only legitimate way to gain entry here is to work for the Legion. Slightly farther southeast sits the old nuclear test site, a ghoul-infested radioactive site that once hosted nuclear testing in the pre-war era. To the south-southeast of Nipton lies Bradley's Shack, a small booby-trapped shack in the hills held by the Jackals. Just south of Nipton lies the Mojave Drive-In, an abandoned drive-in movie theater with a crashed satellite belonging to Big Mountain. To Nipton's southwest, Crescent Canyon, a deep crevasse accessible from its eastern and western ends, is filled with radioactive waste, wrecks, and golden geckos. West-southwest of Nipton, and not far from the western mouth of Crescent Canyon, lies Morningstar Cavern, where a pack of Night Stalkers dwell with their den mother. On the road west of Nipton lies the Jackals-infested Nipton Road Pit Stop. At the junction of that same road and I-15 lies the Rad Scorpion-infested Nipton Road Rest Stop. Nipton lies just east of the Ivanpa Dry Lake Bed, a flat pan of land home to the Ivanpa racetrack. Northwest, across the Ivanpa Dry Lake Bed, a Nevada Highway Patrol station, oddly situated in California, has been taken over by the Jackals gang. Let's now compare the locations of real-world sites that can be found in-game with their locations in-game. We'll start with municipalities and facilities, and then cover natural sites. Primm, Nevada, found approximately 12 miles northwest of Nipton in the real world, can similarly be found northwest of Nipton in the game. Searchlight, Nevada, found about 20 miles east of Nipton in the real world, can be found east of Nipton in-game. While the New Vegas Strip can be found north of Nipton in-game, the heart of the real-world Las Vegas Strip is found approximately 44 miles north of Nipton. The real-world Ivanpa Solar Electric Generating Station, found approximately 13 miles northwest of Nipton, likely has an in-game counterpart in the Helios 1 solar power plant found northeast of Nipton in-game. Jackrabbit Springs, found northwest of Nipton in-game, is potentially a representation of the real-world Jackrabbit Springs, found approximately 88 miles northwest of Nipton in the Ash Meadows Wilderness. The Ivanpa Dry Lake Bed, found west of Nipton in-game, is also found west of Nipton in the real world, and both have an old racetrack on them. While I couldn't find an analog for Crescent Canyon, I did find Crescent Peak just over 8 miles to the east of Nipton. Morningstar Cave, found west-southwest of Nipton in-game, is likely a reference to Morningstar Mine, found about 14 miles southwest of real Nipton. Walking Box Cavern, found northeast of Nipton in-game, is likely a reference to the real-world Walking Box Ranch, found just over 13 miles east-northeast of Nipton. The nuclear test site southeast of Nipton is a probable reference to the real-world Nevada test site found 108 miles northwest of Nipton in the real world. With the sites around Nipton covered, let's consider the layout of the town itself. In the real world, Nipton lies in a valley, a few miles east of the Ivanpah Dry Lake bed, at the intersection of Nipton Road and the Seamus subdivision of the Union Pacific Railroad. The town is primarily wrapped around Nipton Road. While Nipton is in California, it lies close to the border with Nevada, and on the Nevada side of the border, Nipton Road is known as Highway 164. This is true in-game as well. Nipton in-game also lies on a rail line, but while the real rail line runs through the center of town, in-game, the rail line is just east of town in Nevada. While both versions of the town are near the border, it is on the border in the game and about 2 3/4 miles from the border in real life. While in the real world the land around Nipton is fairly flat, in-game it is a fairly hilly area. Real-world Nipton is home to a trading post, a hotel, a few houses, a trailer park, a schoolhouse, a cafe, and a fenced-in lot. In-game, the town is home to a similar trading post, a hotel, 12 houses, of which 8 are habitable and 4 of which are destroyed. Along with this, there's a trailer park, town hall, and a water tower. With that said, let's get into the history of the site in the Fallout universe. Much of the pre-war history of Nipton is unknown, but we can speculate on it to an extent from what we can find in-game and what the town is like in real life. Once a mining camp, the arrival of the railroad turned Nipton into a rail stop for loading outbound ore and cattle, and offloading inbound supplies for local mines and ranches. By the late 20th century, the town became more involved in tourism than industry and agriculture, and served as one of the last stops to buy lottery tickets before entering Nevada. Nipton appears to have had a surprising level of civic engagement, if the size of the town hall and its assembly chambers is anything to go off of. When the Great War came, much of the Mojave was spared direct nuclear strikes thanks to the ingenuity and largesse of Robert House and his missile defense system. Despite being spared destruction by the bombs, the collapse of the country killed the tourism economy, and the town was likely sparsely populated for the next near 2 centuries. In 2274, the forces of the new California Republic came east and seized the Hoover Dam, and began to annex the Mojave. 3 years later, a unified band of tribes known as Caesar's Legion came west and attempted to take the dam from the NCR. Though the NCR held onto their claim, it had been by the skin of their teeth, and they were desperate to reinforce their position in the Mojave. To bring more troops to the region and to keep them supplied, the NCR had established a trade route from New Vegas to the heartland of the NCR along I-15. Along with the traffic on the interstate, the Republic was working to re-establish a rail line to Vegas. In this effort, they brought convicts from across the NCR into the Mojave. Housed at the New California Republic Correctional Facility, or NCRCF, the NCR employed these convicts as laborers on the railroad that ran right past Nipton. By 2281, Nipton was under the control of Mayor Joseph B. Stein. Once a citizen of the NCR's hub, Stein came east to earn a fortune on the frontier. To accomplish his money-making goals, Stein brought with him 2 prostitutes, Rose and Sylvia, that he used to gain power in Nipton. While to the north, Prim was taking advantage of the booming traffic on the Long 15 by offering gambling, Rose and Sylvia were Nipton's draws to passing caravans. His girls, as Stein referred to them, also drew nightly visits from the NCR troopers at Mojave Outpost. All this increased traffic to Nipton put Stein in a position of power, and he used that power to enrich himself, taking 15% of the profits from the local businesses. In the summer of 2281, Mayor Stein had a tech-savvy local by the name of Tony set up a terminal in his office on which to record a journal of his ill-gotten gains. Tony was skilled with electronics, not only restoring terminals for himself and for the mayor, but also a pair of Mr. Gutsy robots that he hoped to use to wow the ladies. Unpopular with the people of Nipton, especially the women, Tony had accepted payment for Mayor Stein's terminal and 30 caps worth of Rose's time. In September 2281, news came in that the convicts at the NCRCF had revolted and taken over their prison. Calling themselves the Powder Gangers, these escaped convicts were causing problems all over the region, assaulting caravans, NCR-aligned forces, and war parties of Caesar's Legion alike. In this raider band, Mayor Stein saw opportunity. He sent his emissaries to invite the Powder Gangers to do business in Nipton. Known as Big Jim and Little Jim, collectively the Jims, these emissaries were met with mixed results. Though Big Jim didn't survive the negotiations, Little Jim had secured a deal. Lured by promises of free turns with Stein's girls, the Powdergangers began to frequent Nipton by day. Though sworn enemies of their former captors in the NCR, Mayor Stein prevented confrontations between the troopers from the Mojave Outpost and the Powdergangers of the NCRCF, as they kept opposite schedules. For the first few weeks, this strategy was working quite well, and Mayor Stein was raking in the caps, but October brought with it a new opportunity. Approached by a man identifying himself as Mr. Fox, Mayor Stein had taken a meeting. When they were alone, this man identified himself as a member of Caesar's Legion and made a proposition. As both the NCR and the Powdergangers frequented the town, both enemies of the Legion, Mr. Fox asked that Mayor Stein arrange a deal with the Powdergangers. He wanted some of them to stay behind as night fell to kidnap some of the NCR troopers. Then, with both parties in town, Legion forces would capture them all. For this, Mayor Stein would be paid 8,000 caps, practically all he had hoped to make on the frontier in a single deal. Though he could have potentially taken this money and run back home, the mayor's greed wouldn't let him leave, and he planned to keep his post after completing this duplicitous operation. In case things went poorly though, he did create a backup plan, storing some supplies and, for whatever reason, a partial copy of his Journal of Misdeeds in the Nipton Road rest stop. Thus, Mayor Stein met with the Powdergangers and talked them into the plan. Supposedly, they would take the troops hostage, after which they would get to keep the troopers' guns, and would then hold them for ransom. The way things unfolded would be quite different. That night, the Powdergangers gathered to conduct their part of the deal, surrounding the Nipton Hotel with the troopers within. Just then, a party of legionaries and their attack dogs stalked into town. Led by Mr. Fox, or Volpez and Colta as he was known, the legionaries struck quickly, capturing the Powdergangers and killing the troopers in the hotel. Spreading out across town, they attempted to round up the citizens of Nipton. The legionaries killed those they found sleeping and others as they attempted to flee or fight back. Losing only 2 men to traps and Tony's Mr. Gutsy, the remaining legionaries ordered the people to the center of town. Here, they began to distribute lottery tickets to the citizens as Volpez and Colta told them they were being punished. The Legion would hold a lottery with tiers of winners. Though they outnumbered the legionaries, most of the people of Nipton were too terrified to put up a fight. When one of them attempted to flee the gathering, he was chased to his trailer. Using a laser rifle, the attempted escapee managed to turn one of the legionaries into ash before he met his own fate. Thus, the remaining prisoners waited for their numbers to come up. The first place winner of the lottery would be spared. The second place winner would have their legs broken. The third place winners would be enslaved. The rest of the town faced execution. In the end, Oliver Swanwick, a Powderganger, won first place, while another Powderganger, Boxcars, won second place and crawled into the trading post with broken legs. 2 third-place winners were hauled off into slavery. Every other citizen of Nipton was put to death by beheading and crucifixion, aside from Mayor Stein, who was thrown alive into the flames. As Oliver Swanwick ran from Nipton, a courier walked into town. Days prior, this courier had been shot in the head while attempting to carry a package to the Lucky 38 casino in New Vegas. Having been rescued from near death, the courier was now hunting for the man who had shot them and buried them in a shallow grave, a man in a checkered suit. This search had brought them south, first to Prim, now to Nipton, and just as Oliver Swanwick ran from the town, cheering his good luck. When questioned about his demeanor, he related little more than his excitement at being a lottery winner and being alive. Confused, the courier walked past the decapitated heads of the people of Nipton, toward the burning pile of refuse and corpses that stood in the middle of the street. Seeing the road heading towards Town Hall lined with crucified men, the courier turned in that direction. Near the Town Hall, they could see a handful of men in red. As the courier approached Town Hall, these men were joined by a man wearing a coyote headdress, clearly their leader. The leader assured the courier that they wouldn't be harmed. He had a job for them. Spread the news of what the Legion had done here. He told them the story of how the wicked, debased, and corrupt town had fallen to the Legion. Rejecting the notion that any in the town were innocent, he called Nipton a town of whores. He referred to his deal with the mayor and how it had facilitated his takeover of the town. In the end, he and his cadre of men and dogs marched east, back towards the river. The courier watched them go and contemplated their next moves. Turning away from their chase of the man in the checkered suit, the courier traveled to Mojave Outpost, bringing the news of the fall of Nipton to NCR Sergeant Kilbourne. The sergeant was terrified by this news, but thanked the courier regardless. In exploring the outpost a bit, the courier met Ranger Ghost, who had grown concerned about the smoke she saw rising from Nipton. When the ranger asked the courier to investigate, they revealed what they had seen to her as well. Also disheartened by this news, Ranger Ghost thanked the courier regardless. With the story of the fall of Nipton spread, the courier turned back towards their original path. On returning to Nipton, they entered the trading post where they found Boxcars, the second-place winner of the lottery, nursing his broken legs. Hoping to spare Boxcars the pain of his crippling, the courier passed him a few syringes of Med-X. On hearing about the slaves taken by the Legion, the courier raced off to free the prisoners from a life of servitude. They found the soon-to-be slaves on their knees in a Legion raiding camp. After eliminating the guards, the courier freed the men, allowing them to run for their lives. When the courier returned to Boxcars, he made it clear that he didn't care about their fates. With that, the courier left Nipton, once more on their mission to find the man in the checkered suit. There's a bit more to talk about in terms of the story of Nipton, but it'll wait till the notes section. For now, let's cover a brief history of real-world Nipton. I've covered the geological and Native American history of this area in my video on Goodsprings, so we're going to jump right to its more modern history starting in the mid to late 19th century. In those days, this region was home to many mines, and Nipton was a mining camp at the crossroads of two wagon trails. In 1905, the San Pedro, Los Angeles, and Salt Lake Railroad arrived, and Nipton was founded. One of the most prominent early residents of the town was Harry Traherne, who worked to develop the community through the early 20th century. Mr. Traherne was granted the land on which Nipton sits in 1940 when President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed over the title through the Homestead Act. In 1956, the town was sold by the Traherne family. Nipton passed through the hands of 6 other developers before it was purchased by Gerald Freeman and his wife Roxanne Lang in 1984. A geologist, Freeman had been prospecting for gold when he found the town near ruin. After establishing a gold mining company, he and his wife purchased the town for $200,000. Over the next 27 years, Freeman and Lang spent about $1 million refurbishing the town, drawing new residents to the area. Around 2011, they installed 80 kilowatts of solar panels, built 5 eco-cabins, and changed the motto to Nipton, powered by the sun. Though they planned to build energy-efficient buildings, an organic farm, EV charging stations, and more solar power, Freeman's health unfortunately took a turn for the worse, and the couple put the town on the market in 2016. The following year, Nipton was purchased by American Green Inc., with a plan to turn it into a cannabis tourism destination. This project failed to materialize and the town was again sold in 2018. The new owner put it on the market in November 2020 and it sold again in January 2023 to Spiegelworld, a theater company that performs in Las Vegas and Atlantic City. Spiegelworld uses the town as its base of operations and a place to retreat and dream. As far as I can tell, the company still owns the town and is using it as their retreat. Alright, that pretty much covers the real-world history, but before closing things out, I've got some notes on this topic. First, upon inspection of the town, it's clear that Vulpes and Colta lied about how well the Legion assault on the town went. First, he completely neglects to mention the casualties his men incurred. Second, he fails to mention that some people did indeed fight back. Third, he doesn't mention the people who were never corralled into the center of town, a fact we can see based on the bloodstains in a few houses in town and the bodies in Town Hall. I think he lied here because his goal was to spread fear. Any of these facts might have reduced the impact of his message. Second, the courier can kill Vulpes and Colta and his men immediately after meeting them or even without meeting them. Doing this will make the quests Cold Cold Heart and the Finger of Suspicion fail. It will also lead the player to meet a different Legion operative, a man named Ilario, when Caesar invites the player to meet with them. Along with this, when I shared the story of freeing the potential slaves taken by the Legion, this is not necessarily canonical, but it is a possible action the courier could have taken. Any Legion-aligned players would obviously leave them to their fate. Third, Nipton Town Hall is filled with bodies and Legion attack dogs. The dogs even stay after the main raiding party leaves. I'm not entirely sure what happened here, but I have considered a couple of possibilities. A, the Legion may have realized some citizens were hiding in the town hall and unleashed the dogs rather than go in themselves. In this version of things, we are seeing the aftermath of the dogs slaughtering these people. B, the Legion may have cleared the town hall, killing all these people. In this version of things, and the prior, the dogs were left behind as live booby traps for any rescue party attempting to search for survivors. Fourth, the lottery tickets used by the Legion say they're from the state of Nevada, but in the real world, there is no lottery in Nevada. It's one of the draws of Nipton, or at least was. I've read that since the lotto shop opened just across the state line from Prim, lotto ticket sales in Nipton have dropped off by 95%. Fifth, though Tony's terminal claims that he has 2 Mr. Gutsies that he plans to use to impress the chicks, only one can be found in his home. Along with this, it should be noted that Tony was very well armed. There are a lot of weapons in his home. Sixth, the lore of the town doesn't quite match the physical reality of the town. First, where are all the businesses that were supposedly paying the mayor his 15%? Other than the trading post, I don't see any other obvious businesses. I say this because the hotel, which is larger on the inside than the outside, doesn't even have any rooms. Seventh, on Mayor Stein. First, it has to be noted that he was a pimp who managed to take over the town thanks to Rose and Sylvia. Next, the terminal entries on Stein's terminal seem to have their titles switched around. His entry entitled Prison Break has nothing to do with the NCRCF, while the entry entitled High Roller does. Along with this, the message entitled Testing ... is clearly his last entry, but the title would better fit a first entry. Along with this, his terminal-bound journal can be found in printed form. Well, at least the second half can, because the first half was never added to the game. Lastly on this point, you can spawn Mayor Stein into the game on PC with console commands. The fact that he has a character model makes it seem likely that he was to have a larger part to play in the story at some point in development. I'd like to think that there was a version of things where he ran to the Mojave outpost and was prevented from leaving by the guards as normal procedure, and could then be arrested if the player presented evidence of his wrongdoing. Eighth, according to the strategy guide, Ulysses once owned Wolfhorn Ranch. As this never made it into the game, it's a non-canonical piece of lore, but interesting nonetheless. Ninth, if you have the Wild Wasteland perk, one of the destroyed houses has 2 skeletons out front. If you get close enough, you'll see that they are named Owen and Baru. This is a reference to Star Wars, as those are the names of Luke's aunt and uncle, who he finds as burned up skeletons after they are killed by the Empire. Lastly, there's a shack at the nuclear testing site. Within this site lies the body of a character named Trash, and 3 books that constitute her aptly named Diary. Trash was tired of living as a human, so she came to the nuclear test site to become a ghoul in the ambient radiation. Unfortunately, not all people become ghouls when exposed to radiation, and she simply died of radiation poisoning instead. On that cheery note, I think that'll do it for the story of what happened to Nipton. Follow me on X for lore video announcements at Gaming with Maps. My Discord is open to the public, there's a link in the channel's banner. I stream every Friday evening on YouTube, come check it out if you're interested. If you appreciate what I do here and you want to support the channel financially, you can become a member on YouTube or a patron on Patreon. I want to thank my channel members and patrons, Mesothelioma, 76 at Texas, Dark Malcontent, Real76, Dr. Orion, Samsung Smart Fridge, Night Spearhead, Ahotep, Prince Julius, and Chris G059 for their support. This has been the Irresolute Cartographer. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again next time.